Okay, so I'm going to walk you through the demographics lab. So this is our course. It hasn't started yet. So you'll see there's some old news announcements. Um, but anyway, so there's two ways to get to that lab. You can go into the course content into the populations unit and find it there. Or I actually have everything that you need for you in this user link section. You'll see there's Jigsaw resources. When you guys get to this video, there'll be some links above this, the links to the Jigsaw sessions. You can see the other lab walkthrough that I've done is here. But then we have these course resource newsletters, and these have information about every single assignment that you have in the course, plus some extra information. So if I click on the one for populations, it's going to take me here. And I'm going to scroll through these for a second just to show you. And you see there's all these extra videos and resources about the information for that unit. The review that I did for the virtual school APES class is right here. And then there's some graphics and things like that. So anyway, there's lots of good information in these, so definitely check them out. So we need the demographics lab. So let's go up here. Okay, here's the demographics lab. I want to show you this too, by the way. Sorry. Um, if any student asks me a question about a lab, what I'll do is I'll answer it for them, obviously. But then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put the question and the answer in this course resource newsletter. That way you guys have access to these questions, these frequently asked questions. So hopefully that is helpful for you as you guys kind of work through the lab. If you have a question, kind of check this first and see if the question's already answered, and then you don't have to wait for me to get back to you, because I know that's a struggle with virtual school, is that sometimes you have a question right now and you can't ask your teacher right now because, you have to email me and then you have to wait for me to get the email and then reply to you. So, and then for you to check it. So hopefully that is helpful as well. And the more questions you guys ask me, the more things I can put here too. So don't ever hesitate by asking questions. So this lab has a data table for this assignment, and it's on page 6 of the module, or you can just click here and it's going to go ahead and get the data table for you. I'm going to open it so you can see it. Okay, here it is. And then the link through the lab is right here. Okay. And basically, so this is just showing you kind of how to work the lab or whatever. So we're going to click this link, and then I'm going to make this page smaller because when I'm doing these virtual labs, I like to be able to have my data table and my lab up at the same time. That way I can, get everything at the same time. So anyway, so this is the demographics lab. So this is going to be our demographic transition, step 1. Here's some information and some questions for you to answer at the end. Okay, so these are the questions. So let me put them here. I'm going to put them here just so we've got them. We've saved them somewhere. Okay, so you can read all this information. You can click this, it'll give you the data table. But anyway, let's open the simulator. Okay, and let's see. We've got these different countries. So let's look. The USA in 2015 had a growth rate or a birth rate of 1.98 per woman, and then it had a death rate of 1.16%. Okay, we can go to a different country. Brazil is next. So the Brazil was 1.72 per woman, and the death rate was 0.86%. And then you can go, let's do Nigeria. You're going to do all of them, obviously, but I just want to have like a couple different ones. So you can see this growth rate, this birth rate is much higher, right? 4.07 per woman, and then the death rate is 1.11%. And then the growth is 182 million. Oh, look at this. Right here, this is what I need to be putting down, 2.65%. Okay, so I'm going to go back to Brazil. And I'm going to go back to the United States. Okay, so now I'm gonna run this for a little bit until we get to 2050. Okay, and I'm gonna pause it at 2050. Okay. And so the population growth of the United States in 2050 is negative 0.15%. Okay. Let's do Brazil. Let's run that to 2050. Okay, it's negative 0.26. And then let's do Nigeria. Okay, so you can see that for the United States and Brazil, the population growth rate is going down, but for Nigeria, it's actually going up. Okay, so now we can look at the relative place in the transition. This is talking about the demographic transition. So you can look here. So this one is going to show you the demographic transition, so you can kind of see. So here we've got our growth rate. If your growth rate is increasing, okay, then you're going to have, you're going to be, if your growth rate's increasing, like you have a high birth rate, you're going to be in maybe like 2 or 3. Okay, so Nigeria is probably somewhere like stage 2 to 3 because their growth rate is increasing. Okay, and then if we look at the United States, the population growth is decreasing, right? So they're declining, so it's going to be somewhere like closer to 5. Okay. And I like this image. I'm going to leave it up here for a second in case you guys want to take a screenshot of it or anything, because it kind of shows what's going on in each stage of the demographic transition. Okay. And like kind of reasons for that, social factors. So that might help you fill out this part of the table. If you look at this image, these social factors might help you figure out, what's causing that over there. Okay. And then let's go back to the lab. Okay. So the shape of the pyramid. We're going to predict the shape. Okay, so you can you're going to do this, and then you can kind of think about the shape of the pyramid. So the United States, the growth rate's going down. So I would say that the bottom is going to be skinnier than the top, okay, in 2050. Okay, so let's see what's going on in here. Let's look at the United States again, and let's look at it in 2050. Okay, so it's not exactly skinnier. I mean, it's a little bit. It's more like a column. Okay, so you guys will kind of write, whatever you see here, kind of what you predict, and then what it happens to be. And you see, mine's not exactly correct, and that's okay. You don't have to say it. You don't have to go to 20, like have them be the same. You're trying to figure it out. You're guess, you're learning this. So you don't have to like go ahead to 2050 and then like put exactly what it already is and then say, "Oh, I was the same." You're allowed to be different. It's okay. You're not going to lose points for that. Okay. So that's what I'm putting for that. Then you guys can go ahead and answer these questions, and you can put your answers in here, or you can put them on a separate sheet of paper. Whatever you want to do is fine. But I'm not going to answer those for you. Okay, if you need that extra space, it'll have it. And then now we'll go to lesson 2. Okay, so we were not doing that right. Okay, so this was the population momentum part. So this is kind of confusing because so on the website, demographic transition is lesson 1. So it's not like the steps. So if we look at step 2, these 2 questions should be here. Okay. Then if we go to the next part, lesson 2 is population momentum. This is why it's important to read the directions. And then the third one is social impacts. So we're going to select Nigeria, run the simulator with default settings. And we'll run it to 2050. Record the results in the data table. Predict what happens when the average age of childbearing women is increased by 5 years. So fewer teenage pregnancies. Okay, so that's what we're going to do here. Okay. So this is, we are predicting okay, so we want to predict what's going on. Okay, so if we're increasing the childbearing years, I would say that the birth rate would go down. Okay. I'm going to say the death rate will probably go down because you're not going to have the teenage children, the teenage women having pregnancies. You're also not going to have as many babies born to really young mothers, which sometimes can be dangerous. And then I would say the population growth rate would decrease as well. So I'm going to say all of these decrease. Okay, and now what we're going to do is we're going to go in here and we're going to increase this 5 years. Okay, so okay. I'm gonna actually take this. I'm gonna reset it because I'm worried. Okay, there we go. So I'm gonna increase it 5 years. So that makes it 34.1. And let's see what happens. So this is going to be 3.94 per woman, 1.15%, 2.27%. Okay, and now we're going to increase it by 15 years. 5, 10, 15. Okay. Okay, so now I'm going to run it to 2050. Okay, so now we're going to have 3.67 per woman. This is going to be 1.25%. And this is going to be 1.92%. So So the reason the death rate went up here is because that's a pretty old age for mothers. And so they're probably going to have more complications with their pregnancies. So now we're going to go minus 5 years. Okay, so what was it at first? Like 29.2. Okay, let's go down 5, so 24.7. And let's see what happens here. Okay, so this is going to give us 4.17 per woman. And then we're going to have 1.05%. And then 3.51%. Okay, so the growth is going up a lot. Now let's use the United States birth and death rates. Let's reset this, and let's just use the United States. Okay. Oh, except we want to reset this too. Okay. Let's reset all of that, and we'll use the United States. Okay. Now let's run it to 2050. Here's what we're going to get. So that this part was actually right. So we'll put this, I'm just going to take a screenshot, and I'm going to plop him in here right here so I don't have to try and sketch the whole thing. And then let's see what step 2 says. Okay, step 2, we're going to look at Japan. Okay, so we're going to run this to 2050. Okay, so we're going to predict. Let's look at what Japan has now, just to kind of see. So their birth rate is 1.39. Their death rate is 1.4%. And their growth is negative 0.10%. Okay, so what do we want to do? We're predicting what's going to happen if we increase the birth rate. I would say that let's look at what Japan is now. So right now the average age is 30. So if we increase it, I would say the birth rate's going to decrease. I would say the death rate it's not that high, it's not too bad. Let's do decrease. And the population growth, I bet that's going to go down too. So, again, I might not be totally right, but I'm just guessing, okay? So age 30, we're going to add 5 years. That's going to be 35. I'm going to apply that, and let's go to 2050. Okay, so let's see. Our birth rate is 1.39. So that stayed the same. Our death rate actually went up, and our growth went down even worse. Okay, so now let's go to 15. So here, I'm going to need to reset that. Let's do 40, 45. Okay, so the best they have is 44, so we'll go with that. 45 is kind of old to have a child. Not that it's not impossible, but it's pretty, they might not have data for that. So there's 2050, so we've got 1.38. So, look, it stayed about the same actually. That's not that far off. 1.63%. The death rate's definitely increasing. And the population growth rate went down. Not much more than that one. They're pretty close. And now let's see what happens if we decrease it by 5 years. Okay, so let's reset this. And we'll go to 25.1 and we'll apply. Okay. Let's see what happens. Okay, we've got 1.4 per woman. Okay, again, that's pretty about the same. 0.75%. It's still going, it's going to go up worse. And then negative 1.24%. So that's going to decrease the population growth even more. Okay, so there's that. Now let's go to step 3. You guys can answer the questions. I'm not going to answer those for you, but we've already kind of copied them in there. So let's go here. I'm going to stop, make sure. Let's go to social impacts. Okay, step 1 has these 4 questions. And then we've got this one, these few. Okay, so this one wants us to predict the average death rate, what the average death rate and birth rate would have to be for Iraq to have a 0% population growth. Okay, so that's the instructions for this one. And then record it and then run the parameter until you have a 0 growth rate. Okay, so let's see. Iraq right now has 2.45%. So let's increase the death rate. Let's do like 3%, see what it does. And then I'm going to leave the birth rate the same. And again, this is just a prediction. I'm just guessing. Okay, so it's not a big deal. Okay, and then it may take you a few times, but basically you'll put like 2 of your guessings here, and then you'll put the one that actually got you to 0. Okay, so let's see. Well, let's see what happens actually if we just run this. By 2050, our growth rate is going to be 1.72. Okay, with what they gave us. So let's try and do I'm going to leave it at 3 per children. And then I'm going to make this death rate go up. Okay, well, let me do 2.47 is about as close as I can get. So let's try that. Okay. And then this was we're keeping this about 3. Let's see what happens here. This is going to give us 1.33. Okay, so let's go down like maybe like 1. What about that? Let's do 1.07. And then let's keep this up at 3.29. Let's try that. So that's way too low. Okay, so now we can just, okay, let's maybe do 2 kids. Keep the birth rate the way it is. Oh, we were pretty close. I'm gonna go with that one. I'm gonna leave that. If you can get closer, please try. I'd like to see how close you can get to 0. I just don't want to make you guys sit and watch this forever. Okay, so now we're going to try Brazil and Indonesia. We're going to predict the shape of the pyramid and then predict the growth rates. Okay, so this is what we have to do for this part. The shape of the pyramid recorded in the data table, and then the percentage of population growth. Okay, so our predictions are in yellow. They'll be in yellow. Okay, so the prediction, Brazil, I'd say, let's get to Brazil. Okay, so I'd say it's going to become more of a column. Okay, I think it's going to go more straight up and down the sides, where the sides are going to be a little more straight. And then my predicted birth rate, what are we at now? 1.72. Let's do like, I don't know, like 1.5. And then predicted population growth, we're at 0.86 now. Let's just do 1, a nice even 1. Okay, now let's run it to 2050 and see what happens. Okay, the pyramid, it's becoming kind of like a column, but it's getting skinnier on the bottom. The death rate is 1.42. Ooh, I didn't do that. I'll go back to it. The simulated death, oh, sorry, the birth rate was 1.72. The death rate was 1.42. And the growth was saying, okay, so my growth rate was like way off, right? My birth, the death rate, I don't even, it's 0.86 now. Let's just do another 1. I'm trying not to like look at what I had before. Okay, so let's see what happened. So we weren't really all that correct at all, but that's okay. Indonesia. Let's look at the pyramid. Okay, so it looks like this. I'm going to say it's going to start getting wider at the bottom. So their birth rate right now is 2.07. It tends to stay pretty close, so I'm going to do like 2.1. The death rate is 0.95. Let's go to like 1.2. I'm just totally guessing here. You guys can put whatever you want. And my growth is 1%. I'm going to do, or it's 1.03. I'm going to do 1.2. I'll do 1.2. twice. Okay, so now let's run this. Okay, so what did we get? The simulation. Okay, so this one was more column-like. Okay, our birth rate was 2.07. Hey, we weren't that far off. The death rate was 1.32. And the population growth is 0.21%. Okay, so I was way off on that. Okay, so anyway, but at least we've got it. And now you guys can answer your questions. You can take some notes here at the bottom if you want. I'm going to go ahead and put the directions for the other parts on here. And then I will put this slab with it blank, but filled out like with the directions in this course resource newsletter. That way, at least you'll have the directions right there, so you won't have the problems I had where I wasn't like reading the directions, so you don't have to go back and forth between tabs. So anyway, that's how that one goes. Sorry it was a little long. I'll probably crop it a little bit.